Welcome to the Sisters Interview on February 10th. Tonight, we're very lucky to have Her Excellency Annisa Gabrielli, who is a member of the Order of the Laurel, and a carp, too, right? And a carp of the Kingdom of Antir, and a good friend of a whole bunch of my good friends. And I used to fight for her husband, and she's just all around super and excellent and an amazing, amazing artist. Anyway, Sarithkin and my sister, Ashaksi, hosting. And so, Annisa, thank you for agreeing to do this. We usually start these with your origin story. So if you can tell us, when, where, how you found the SCA, that would be great.
Oh, gosh. Let's see. I think I went to my first event in 1989. I had always kind of been into, historical geekery and dressing up and Lord of the Rings and all those kinds of good roots of the SCA. And had a friend who took me to an event one time down at Canterbury Fair, which a lot of people have less fond memories, but it was my very first event, so I thought it was an awesome place. And yeah, four of us stuffed into a Fiat Spider and drove down there.
Wow.
And then I was pretty well hooked, but went off to college shortly after, and wasn't quite sure how to go about finding it. That was pre-internet, really. And then I was taking a history class, and somebody who was in the class had arranged with the teacher to do a demo on one of the last days of class. So I met her and traveled to events with her for the rest of that year at least, and got involved and started going to camping events, and I suppose the rest is history.
Were you still in Ontario in college?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I grew up in Seattle and went to college up in Western Washington, up in what was then Shittimwood, it's now Thornwood. Great little group, shire up there. It was a fun shire to be in. It was quite small and close knit, so you got a little taste of everything, because we'd have, project night was people working on armor, people working on sewing, people working on weaving or brewing or whatever was happening. It was all in one place, and so it was a nice way to get really introduced to a broad range of what the SCA had to offer.
So I know you've been a professional seamstress in your mundane life. Is sewing a skill that you came into the SCA with, or is it something that you learned through the SCA?
It is. It's probably one of the avenues that got me interested in it. When I was a kid, a lot of the trying to keep my sister and I entertained was, here, have a sewing kit. Here's some scraps of old jeans, embroider things on them, and so I started making clothes for my stuffed animals when I was probably about 3, and just sewing things to them and attaching it and decorating stuff, and then gradually got a bit more competent and learned how to use a sewing machine at about 7 or 8, and I always liked making stuff. And I certainly did medieval dress up for the pony that I used to ride for a costume class we had at a little show there. I had a little comparison for him and totally made up fantasy dress for myself, and then
As a kid?
oh yeah,
Oh, very cool.
or something at that point. So it had always been with me. And then when my friends started taking me to a couple of events, I was like, ooh, I'm gonna make stuff and embroider all over it, and dyed bed sheets and made myself a tunic and everything. So it was
When you first started, what culture or period were you interested in?
Well, having grown up doing Irish step dancing and reading all the fantasy novels, it was, Irishy, made up, invented version of Irish stuff was kind of where I started, with my own heritage and stuff. But then I got into, I'm not sure what got me interested in Italian. I think, oh, I do remember. I had realized that people tended to recognize me by my hair. And so I like the 14th century because I like the silhouette and it works well for my body, and I thought it was pretty. And but it almost always goes with your hair covered. And I had read that the Italians with the limited resources that I had available at the time. I read that the Italian women didn't always cover their hair. So I thought, okay, well, people will still recognize me because I won't have my hair all covered up. And then I got into covering my hair anyway, but that was where the name came in, with the Italian sort of name. And then lately I've been more into French, but I haven't bothered doing any sort of name change or anything. So
very cool. So how long did it take you to get into horses in the SCA? Because that's kind of a big jump expense-wise with playing this game.
yeah, and it's a big shift in where you put your energy when you're at an event. Horses are sort of my other passion for my whole life. And I volunteered at Woodland Park Zoo's pony ring for all of my teen years so that I could ride horses and get to do stuff with horses without having to, have a car, which I didn't, and get out to the suburbs where you could take lessons and such. So when I went off to college, I didn't get to do horse things for a while. And I'd been to a few events where there were horses. I remember some events that were held at sites that had horses at them. And I would wander over there and hang around the fence and not really know how to start talking to anybody. And it took a while to find an avenue to actually get involved, more than just as a spectator. But when I moved back to Seattle after college and wasn't terribly involved for a little while, and then got to know some people down here in Seattle, which is a less close-knit group. So it was a little harder to get in Madrona. And
Absolutely.
But I got to know Mistress Anne Marie and some other people, and she was doing some stuff with horses within the SCA. And around the same time, I met my husband, who also grew up doing horse things and, spent his 20s, like me, not doing so much horse things because it's harder to do when you're a college student and a young person trying to make your way. But we both had a history of doing things with horses, and we had this connection. And so we got to know Raphael and Kyrie and Anne-Marie, and sort of finally had an in to like a connection to get involved to what was going on with the horse activities, and went to an emprise that they were doing up in Midhaven, and got really hooked on that and got back into horses, and then eventually bought our own, and so on and so forth. Now we live on a little 5-acre parcel with 4 horses of our own.
That's so exciting. What did you say, Rivka?
I just said now she's like rearranged her whole life for the horses.
It's true. It's true. It's something I've always loved, and pretty much the life I've always dreamed of, but it took a while to get there. And it's interesting. I was thinking about it the other day, that it's such a fun thing to do in the SCA. It's such a wonderful aspect of historical life that we don't have in our everyday modern lives. And so I think they really bring a lot to events, just ambiance wise. And a lot of the stuff we do is fun, and it's a whole wonderful aspect of dress up and whole different clothes I get to make for somebody, and all of that, and really great camaraderie and fun games. But at the same time, it is all consuming. Taking a horse to an event is a huge project. Taking care of them for all that time, all of the gear, all of the activities.
It's worse than kids.
I was thinking it's like taking an infant to an event, but their diaper bag and car seat are the size of an RV. A lot. So it's always nice when that's some of the events, and then we have some events that aren't. Every time they say, let's have horses at May Crown, I'm like, no, that's my just camping with my people event. So yeah, it's a commitment, but it's also, like September Crown is always really tough on all of us, because especially our little equestrian guild around here, almost everyone is at least one peerage, involved in lots of other things, have been in the SCA for a long time, and it's hard to be sucked into that tournament for so much of the weekend when all of these other things are happening and everybody's here, and there's people from all over the kingdom that we went to see, but then you're like, but I have to be over there. So it's a balance to keep doing all the other things we love about the SCA and also do the horses, but it's fun.
I loved that September Crown. I think last year where they brought the horses to the main part for your competition, because it gives everybody a better opportunity. Because usually they put the horses
on the other
back
side
in the corner.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something we've tried to build. Was that the one up in BC?
Yeah, I think like the Boy Scout camp, was that Boy Scout camp or?
Yeah, it was nice that they got to be on the field, but it was a little hard because there wasn't any other time you could do anything with your horse,
Oh.
except for when we had that tournament. So,
I didn't think about that.
yeah, it's like, okay, we hauled a horse all the way up here across the border. We didn't, but a lot of people did. And then you have two-hour window in which to do anything with it. And the rest of the time that was such a constrained event that there wasn't really space to do anything else. So it was tricky, but we have definitely always tried to get the old Ording site down in Ording, the River Glen site, was always so wonderful because we could really put everything in the middle where you could see it. And it was laid out well to be able to have the horse camping area close by, but then be able to use the main field without taking it over. There was enough space in there that was really fun to be able to have a couple of events there where we could really put the horses on the main stage, but without being as isolated as we often are. So, Gulf Wars is another fun event. If you've ever been down there to Mississippi, it's one of the biggest horse events in the SCA, and the horse field is close to Central, and they do a lot of jousting and fun, spectacular stuff.
Do you trailer your horses down there, or do you use horses that are down there?
No, we fly down, and we mostly just help out on the field. But you get to know people, and then they say, "Oh, you want to hop on?" So you always take your boots and helmet just in case.
And hope.
Yes. Yeah, I've actually got to compete a couple of times on a friend's horse that she was generous enough to share with me, and and that's a tremendous honor. And we hope at some point they'll brave the frozen north here and come visit us and get on our horses. But it's like the SCA. It's a microcosm within the SCA. You go across the country and settle right in with the horse people and get to know them and already have so much in common that it's a nice little sub community of our nice little community that we have.
Yeah, there have been events that I know their horses at somewhere, but I never see them. And I love horses. I was a teenager like you. I worked cleaning stalls so that I could ride,
Right.
and yeah, I think it would be nice to have them more showcased. That would be very cool.
We tried to do that with the Emprix to make an event that was sort of centered around the horses and the other tournaments that we've added as well, but it's keeping them on center stage and then also kind of organizing it so that it's an entertaining show, so that it's not just, well, they're on stage taking up space doing nothing. We try and keep it moving so it's a show worth watching, but it's a special kind of event. It's hard to do that at every event a lot of times. And sites, sometimes they're laid out such that if you have no reason to go over to where the horses are, then you just don't because it's far.
For people who are not from Ontario and don't know, can you explain what Prix is? Because you guys do something really special with that event.
It was actually started before Guillaume and I got involved, but we got involved and grew it some. Raphael and Kyrie and Donwena and Agalos, I think, were the main instigators when it first started, and they had done a few other events with themes and a focus. And so this was one that was based on the 15th century tournament style. There's a book written by King Rene d'Anjou that is how to run a tournament. And it's 1460 French text, where he says, first you start with these announcements and you choose from the Duke number 1 approaches Duke number 2 with a list of 8 judges, and Duke number 2 chooses 4 of those judges so they can agree upon them. And those will be the noble judges who run this tournament. And here's how to post the heraldry that you announce the event with, and here's the cries you should make, and here's where you should go, and here's how everyone should enter the city. And it's like very, very detailed organization for how to do the perfect tournament. And it feels a little bit like an SCA event where he's talking about the way they used to do it, the grandeur of old. But he's kind of in the pinnacle of tournament era as we think of it. So, but he's still sort of calling back to how it should be done according to the old days, which is kind of a fun thing to read in there. But so we try to follow that as much as we can. And each year we try and turn the notch up a little bit, add some new thing to it. So we've built a little dais that our 4 judges sit on, and as much heraldry and pomp and ceremony as we can muster, and encourage everyone everyone that's going to ride in it to dress their horse up, dress themselves up, and have a retinue of helpers, because you need helpers when you're doing horse things. So dress them all up in your heraldry so that you have a lot of pageantry is kind of a big part of it. So at the start of the day, each rider comes in with all their retainers and everyone with banners and dressed up as they can be, and presents themselves to the 4 judges and makes some flowery speech about how they're going to do their best to compete honorably, and so on and so forth. And, so each rider comes in and we have this sort of parade of fabulous heraldry. And then we do jousting, and then we do both the foam and the frangible tip jousting, which are the 2 kinds of jousting the SCA does. And then we take a little lunch break and get everybody out of armor. And then we do more of the typical SCA Gymkhana target games, where they run the quintain and the rings and the various other games that are designed to train for jousting. So we try and set everything up so that it's you can do sort of rings as sport, where you stand up in your stirrups and you hold the lance out to the side and you pick off the ring, and it's easy. But we make people do it on the offside as though you were aiming at a jousting target. So keep your butt in the saddle, and your lance aims across your body. So it's a little harder to hit the target, but it also makes you a better jouster. So we've sort of angled everything at joust training games, and then the jousting tournament as the games we've selected to do that particular tournament, to give it a real 15th century tournament feel. And then as time has gone on, it's gotten bigger and bigger, and we've added a pot arms foot combat tournament, and archery tournament, which isn't necessarily as integral to the 15th century tournament format, but it was the group that co-hosted it with us was a very archery centric group, and the site was fabulous for it that we used for a long time. And so they were able to do York rounds, and then we encouraged them to do as period a shoot as they could do. So whatever historically informed, authentic, dress nice, use your homemade bows, do all the cool stuff, archery tournament. And then this last time we also added rapier, I think, and a feast and various things. So it just grows a little bit every year, and we try to make it the destination horse event of the year. And we've had people come from out of kingdom a few times, which has also involved finding horses for them to use, which is an additional layer of complexity, but it's been really fun. And sometimes they've even won.
Very cool. That's awesome. I'm sorry?
That's a tournament we're pretty proud of, our horse activity achievement.
Yeah, you guys have worked really hard on that.
Yeah.
And it's really special because, there aren't very many events that are sort of themed in a certain time period and pulled off pretty well. You guys have done a really good job at making it feel like it's that time period.
Yeah. And we don't require people to do that, but we've had people come as Celtic and Norman and various other time periods, but it's so much the pinnacle of heraldry and tournament. When you've got a 15th century caparison on your horse and banners and everything in that style, it just gives you the ability to just have so much color and heraldry displayed that a few people have come in their regular persona, and then a couple of years later they come and they've done up a 15th century kit for this event, just because it does play so well in that context. But they don't have to. They can come in whatever time they want. So
Very cool.
I'm thinking, the Scythians had the coolest horse gear.
well, Miranda did a really nice early period. I'm not entirely sure which exactly what time and place she was in, but she did it up really nicely with, it was all her time and place, but it was colorful and very thematically all the way across the board, and it looked fabulous. And yeah, she had her scale armor and all the groovy stuff, and it looked great.
Very cool.
Oh, and helmet crests. We do helmet crests because it's rare you get to do those. They're not really practical for foot combat because you're just going to get it knocked off. But they're just so cool and medieval. So we get to do that. So that's fun.
That's very cool. So did you have a mentor in costuming in the SCA?
Not as such. I had people that helped me out, but that was the one thing about Shithamwood, was that it wasn't a really big arts and sciences group. Everybody did stuff, but it wasn't. There were a lot of pelicans up there. That was awesome. We learned a lot about service, but the ability to, pre-internet, you kind of went to your bookstore and you found the best books you could, but there wasn't a lot of people up there at the time that were doing a lot of very A&S research oriented, point you in the right direction kind of stuff. So I kind of got little bits from here and there, and I did come with some sewing skills already. So I kind of winged it for the first bit. And then, and Ontario was very Norse at the time. There wasn't a lot of 14th century. So I eventually kind of got going with the internet. I found some, international SCA Yahoo groups that were talking about 14th century stuff. So as far as the 14th century angle, I got some really great resources from the internet and the Yahoo groups and things like that. And so there's definitely some people that I've never even met in person that were very much mentors information wise, who I still follow. But I didn't have a lot of hands-on in-person specifics. Countess Elizabeth had arranged a lecture with Robin Netherton, who's a 14th century research star celebrity, that came and did a lecture. I think it was a 2-day lecture series, which was great and definitely lit a fire under me. But there weren't a lot of people locally that I could go to for that. So it's certainly around a lot more now, which is cool.
Yeah.
Were you apprenticed to anyone?
Yes, I was apprenticed to Mistress Anne Marie de Yours. Her focus, well, she's done lots of cool things, but her focus at the time was very much culinary. But also she was, for me, a really good resource because she knew everybody and she could connect me with people. So she could do stuff like, hey, this thing's happening. You should go talk to so-and-so about it. And like when Kaya and Amalric won crown, she was like, hey, the people that just won do 14th century, you should go talk to them. And I was like, but I ended up kind of heading up their wardrobe, and we had a team of 40 people that she helped me assemble to work on all the clothes for their whole reign and their kids and everybody. And that was a hoot and a ton of work, and it was really fun. And we got to do stuff we'd all dreamed of because we were all working as a team to make it happen. So that was fun.
Can you go into that a little bit in depth? Because I think Ontario is sort of unique in the way that really dresses their royalty. And I don't think people understand the kind of teamwork. I mean, 40 people is a huge team.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that was maybe a little outsized for the norm, but yeah, we do dress our royalty, and I think it's neat because it's a fun um focus. You know, sometimes people feel like, oh, I'm doing this art over here and nobody knows I'm doing it, or I'm just doing it for me and my friends. And, you know, how do I get known? It's like we have these people who are on stage. And I use that term a lot because I worked in theater for 20 years, but that's very much what we do. Like our crowns are on stage, and whether they're actors and know how to deal with this or not, that's what we do to them. We put them up on stage and we make them put on a show for us every event. And so helping them out with that is something we can do for them. You know, we can make sure they've got scrolls to hand out. We can make sure that they feel pretty and well dressed, and, you know, they can have all the servers and people to help them get everything organized and put together. And so sometimes people feel like, oh, well, I shouldn't make people work for me. I don't want to be fussed over. I don't, you know, but it's also something that people get to do. I mean, I don't volunteer to do heralding because that's not my thing, but I volunteer to sew because I love to sew. And so it's like, I want to make something really cool, and I want to get together with a bunch of other people and, you know, dress you up to the nines because that's fun for me. So it's a nice way that we can all contribute with our skills, which whatever skills they may be. We can focus them on the crown and make our crown fabulous and make our crown look regal, and you know, kind of make this whole dream happen for everybody.
It's a great way to showcase individual costuming skills as well and get people recognized for that. So you basically headed up a team of 40 people. How did you organize that?
Well, Anne Marie did a lot of the people wrangling for me, which was great. So I had my knowledge with doing stage costuming of like, we should make sketches and have them, you know, we had a communication tool of, we're going to draw out what we're going to make for you. You tell us what colors you want things to be, and more like this or more like that. And so we had a tool to get a good idea of what they wanted and how many multiples. We spent a half a day with their van full of fabric bins. They just loaded up everything and brought it to a central place where we could get together. And you know, we went through like, how many yards is this? Okay, we've got enough to make this garment or that garment or that garment out of this, and this would go nicely with that. And so we just made piles and labeled things for what was going to turn into what. And then, you know, they had a shopping list of what holes they needed to fill in for, you know, this needs a lining, or this needs, you know, you don't have the pants fabric or whatever. So they had a moderate shopping list, but we pretty much went through their entire fabric stash of stuff. But they had moved here fairly recently from a different kingdom and had gotten rid of a lot of their stuff. So they had things, but they didn't have a wardrobe. And their kids had, you know, obviously grown out of whatever they'd been in last year. So
as kids do. Yep. And did you start with looking at their progress and see, you know, like what events they're going to be going to, and how many new outfits they would need, you know, like
we kind of focused on the big ones, like, you know, you're going to have coronation, you're going to have you know, what things can we get done quickly for coronation, and then what things can we dream up for fabulousness for their step down, and, you know, then sort of filling in between with, I think we made like 4 or 5 outfits kind of total, and everything was of a time and place so they could mix and match layers around. But we had for their step down clothes, we had velvet Cote RD type 14th century outer layers with bezants all over them. And so we got the moneyers involved, we got the pewterers involved, we got all these different people, all, you know, sewing people and everything involved. So that we made these little bezants that were stamped out with their heraldry. So they made dies for them and a rolling mill and all this stuff to make these little circles with holes punched in them that we sewed all over their garments so they twinkled in the firelight, and it was fabulous. And but you know, we had the whole reign to get those done. And so yeah, we didn't really look at their whole progress, but we looked at their sort of general idea and the arc of when things could get done by, because that's something that I bring to it in theater costuming, is that we always have a deadline. Yeah. And getting things done on time isn't always something that everybody in the SCA is really good at. Nope. But you know, opening night, it's got to be done, and you've actually got to get it done by dress rehearsal, because you can't put somebody on stage in something they've never worn before. That's our rules. And so, given that we are always dealing with amateur actors, we have people that have to be on stage for maybe the first time in their life, and they've got all this other stuff they have to get organized. So I feel really strongly that it's not fair to a crown for them to be worrying all night before they have to step up about whether they're going to have clothes to wear. So I'm really emphatic about stuff has to be to them before the event. We can't be sewing stuff on the night before, because they need to be comfortable and relaxed and able to focus on their retinue and all their other obligations, so that they can get up there on stage and feel confident. So yeah, so it was a lot about timing. Yeah, and we made piece lists and spreadsheets and all the things for all the pieces. But yeah, it was a fun project, and I think it came off pretty well. And
I think it came off pretty well.
Yeah. My husband's holding up my other soapbox, and they have to have fittings.
Yeah, it's really, really important.
Yes, both sides. Yeah. They have to make time to show up for the fittings, and we have to make sure that their clothes fit, so that they don't get there and go, oh wait, this doesn't close. Uh-oh. You know,
yeah, and sometimes when you do costuming for crowns in Ontario, they live across the kingdom. Yep. And trying to get together is really, really hard. I know Rifkin and I traveled, like we day tripped from our mom's house down to Ontario West to fit Owain and Wren when I was doing their costuming.
Yeah.
And I mean, my daughter was, I don't know,
she was
3 months old. She was a tiny baby. We did this crazy car trip down the coast just to fit them, and then we turned around and went back.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you're talking about the process, though, because on so many levels, I think it's so cool, because people that don't have connections can network through that process and meet people and learn new skills and get challenged. And you can take on these projects that maybe you could never do by yourself because you don't have all the skills. Like you said, you brought in the Moneyers Guild and the Pewters people. It's just super cool.
Yeah, you get to be your own cog, you know, and do that thing you are really awesome at, and somebody else can do the parts that you aren't. I always kind of encourage people to do that with scribal projects as well. Like if you're really awesome at drawing but not much of a calligrapher, or vice versa, do that. If somebody's really good at gilding, all of you work together and make something even more fabulous. And then you also get to know each other.
Right.
So yeah, it was fun. I got to meet a bunch of people and get to know who did what.
And it's such a huge amount of service as well. I mean, it's such a big time commitment to head a royal wardrobe, even work on a royal wardrobe. It's such a labor of love.
It is, but it's what we love to do. So
right.
We love to do it.
You sort of segued pretty good to Scribble, because that's another one of your art forms, right?
Yeah. It's one I haven't been as active in lately, but I'm trying not to stress out about that. It's like, that muse is taking a back burner for a while, and I'll come back to it. I have a couple of in progress things that I need to get my butt going on, but it's, it's kind of one of those things in the SCA where you get into one thing and then you get into another thing and you maybe go back to that. And
do you
love it.
Do you do both calligraphy and illumination? Do you do?
I do. My calligraphy is not as strong as my illumination, and I've learned that it's one of those things I have a really hard time teaching because it's not something I learned to do in any organized way. I do it more like drawing. I am making these shapes, and so my apprentice Alicia is an awesome calligrapher, and anytime somebody wants to learn how to do calligraphy, I just point them at her. And I used to, before I met her, I would point them at Ismenia, who is also a really good teacher of calligraphy because they've learned in a systematic way that they can convey to somebody else. And when I tried to teach someone calligraphy, I realized just how much I don't have that. How much you need that to teach someone. So I am a competent calligrapher, but the illumination and the gilding and the wordsmithing is also a fun nerdery that I really like. I enjoy making things as period as possible, no matter what I'm doing. But I really enjoy trying to fit our SCA traditions as closely as possible to actual historical ones. So finding grants of arms that were done to bestow heraldry on a person is what our awards do, but they always come historically in English anyway, they tend to come from the herald and not from the crown. So there's always some zhuzhing they have to do to make the words behave for what we do, but I like to use those samples. And then do things like pendant seals and other things that are a pain in the butt for the heralds and everyone to deal with, but they're cool. So, so trying to make things extra cool, or if I'm doing it as a book page, to write it like it's a book page, to have the text feel like it's a page out of a book and not necessarily an entirely self-contained thing. So
Awesome. Well, we put together some pictures. Do you want to look at those and then we can talk more about your work as we look through them?
Yeah. Hey, that's the dress I'm wearing now. Different undergown, but so that's just a 14th century outfit in the Friend's Garden.
Fitting these is something that you are very well known for. Like, people come to you to get fitted for these gowns.
And I've tried to teach that a few times. It's a hard thing to get through all in one day, but it's yeah. A lot of our time period is sort of tunic based, which the body shapes the garment, and in these they start shaping the body with the garment. So the garment shapes the body, which makes them comfortable for horseback riding. This is as supportive as any of my sports bras. And, and it's also very, shapely feeling garment. So it, it has really good mobility. You can lift your arms up and not have it bind like a suit jacket or anything. But yeah, I think they're very flattering. And so this was the concept was from that Robin Netherton workshop that I mentioned earlier, where she did a lot of research on how many panels and how did this develop from the rectangular construction that we're familiar with, and where did they start, how did this evolve into a fashion. But yeah, once you get the fit really right, they're tremendously comfortable and functional, and I can do all my horse stuff, muck stalls and ride and do all the stuff I need to do, set up camp, break down camp. Perfectly comfortable, and I think they look nice. So
they look fantastic, for sure.
That was, I think, Nita's selfie frame and just being goofy. This is my favorite medieval ball cap. The bicocket hats are something I've been trying to. It kind of had a little fashion fad in Ontario. Like, everybody's got bicocket hats now, but they're super practical. They don't blow off like a sun hat. Those big wide brim straw hats we all wore for so long. This shades your face, but it doesn't blow off, and they're so comfortable. So they're very practical.
And you've been like shaping and making your own, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is a very soft hat, but it's pretty easy to make and pack. And then like Charles Suburban has been making more structured ones that are even pointier and quite fabulous with fur and everything. But so there's a range of shapes they have, but these are pretty simple, relatively inexpensive way to get into a very practical hat that's they've endured for a long time. You see them into the Tudor and Elizabethan eras, and then from like the 13th century, that whole range were really popular hunting and outdoor activity hats. So men and women wore them. So
Nita Nita is watching and says hello from China.
Nita, you're awesome. We need to come up with a rainbow striped bicocket so she can wear it over her fabulous hair.
That would be cool. Really cool.
This was a hood I made for Eleonora of Greymoor's Elevation to the Order of the Pelican. And that was really fun, both because I think she's awesome and I like making her stuff, and also because I don't get to do a lot of embroidery. It's something I did when I was a kid and, did a lot when I was doing Irish step dancing on our little uniforms and everything, but it doesn't really show up that much on garments of the 14th century. There's some amazing embroidery on church goods and purses and things like that, but I don't get to do it all that much. So it was fun to pull out the embroidery stuff and embroider something. And it sort of evokes a cap of maintenance without literally being a cap of maintenance. So that was fun. Pelican regalia.
I switched the page already, but did you make the buttons too?
I made the fabric buttons.
Yeah.
The bezants around the hem that are sort of alluding to ermine tails are from Billy and Charlie's pewter goods, but I made the fabric buttons.
Very cool.
My lovely camp. We have our autonomous collective called Camp Fromage, which is a bunch of like-minded folks that enjoy a nice, comfortable, relaxed camp and lots of good food. That's all.
And a good-looking camp. I mean,
yeah, we like it to be beautiful, and we hope that isn't intimidating. Sometimes people come in and go, "Oh, my stuff isn't this nice," but I always try to point out that we didn't spring fully formed. I used to camp in a dome tent, and then I had a little Norse A-frame that I made myself. And then, every year you add something to it. We bought some wooden chairs at IKEA, and then, Carl showed up and made some fabulous chairs. And, we painted the banners, and then we got the day shade. And then we, every year you try and add to it a little bit, but we've been doing this for 30 years, so, 25 years at least. And, so it doesn't all come at once.
Yeah.
It's just Kate up in Thierry did a thing at an event one time where she was doing a house and garden tour. So she had some newer people and she brought them through the camps she thought were cool, and she'd come and checked with us ahead of time to make sure that it was okay having a tour come through our camp. But it was a really nice thing to be able to talk to people who were like a little bit wide-eyed with, whatever they'd come to their first event with, and be able to ask questions. And, how big a car do you need to haul all this stuff around? How long does it take to set up? And how does that work? And, you can show them all the modern stuff that you have that you kind of tuck out of sight. And so it looks really nice, but it's not like that stuff isn't there. You get clever about how to do stuff after years and years of hauling it around and dealing with it. So
I love that idea. I think that's great.
It's a great idea.
Sometimes I hear those comments like, "Oh, you guys must all be judging me because your camp is nicer than mine." It's like, no, I just like having my camp like this, I don't see your camp, or I do and I don't care,
Yeah.
I'm too busy enjoying my stuff to judge you for yours.
We're not sitting here going, "Oh, we're better than you. We're hating on that camp over there." No, we're like, "Hey, this is cool."
And if anyone knows you guys at all, you guys are always inviting people over to eat and hang out. So
yeah. Yep. So we like to we like to have it like this, but that doesn't mean anybody else is doing it wrong. So,
And you're too busy making and eating good food to worry about dissing on anyone else.
no. No. Yep, that's just the way we like to do it. And yeah, there's always more cheese. This is our fromage fete, is what we call our little band. And there were more people, but I cropped for color. So we had another guest artist that was there at this point. But our sort of core band is Guillaume and Madalena and I and Sean when he comes to events, and Cesare when he comes to events. So we're down a few drummers as far as regular attendance, and then Rotrude's in the background there playing tambourine.
Can you talk a little bit about the origins of the band and because you guys bring such great ambiance to events?
We do have a particular origin story in that we were at a 12th night. Oh, and Eleonora, I just forgot to mention Eleonora. She's our first string, our first chair tambourinist. Because, there actually is a lot of skill to playing tambourine well, and she rehearses more than any tambourinist I've ever known. Very good at it. No. But yes, our original origin story was that we were sitting around late night at a 12th night after the rapier tournament and in the giant ballroom at the hotel, and we got shushed because there was a bardic thing happening over in the corner, and so they said we couldn't be there having a good time because they were doing a thing over there, and we got a little miffed about being told to shut up and not have a good time because there was something else happening. And so we were like, we need to make music that doesn't matter if anyone is doing something else. We're just going to be so loud that we can't hear you. If you want to talk, go ahead. So the party band was our concept of we're ambiance, and no one has to stop to listen to us. It's loud enough for whatever venue, and carry on with your conversation, carry on with your party, carry on with whatever you're doing. We won't be offended. And so having, Kim says, we can't hear you anyhow. And obviously that's not the appropriate music for every venue. If we're doing an indoor dance thing, sometimes it's recorders and small drums instead of bagpipes and big drums. And if we're doing, if you're doing court background music when people are trying to talk over it, you need to be even quieter. But we like having music that is suitable for outdoors, suitable for playing for dancers and having them all be able to hear you. We really like to play for dancers. And, even if it's midnight at Ontario West War and someone's humming a song into Guillaume's ear and then he's playing it because he could do that kind of crazy thing so that they can dance. We just like to have fun and bring the ambiance and bring the dance music and have ambiance and music for those settings where everyone's not going, shh, it's a performance.
And it's so much fun. Every time you guys come around, you just bring all of this joy and revelry, and it's really an excellent thing that you do.
And I love when you guys play for like crown final processionals and stuff. It's amazing.
I like to do that too.
I think you've done it for me at least once.
Yeah, the trumpet fanfares are fun. We still need to get another regular trumpeter so that you can have the 2-part fanfares because those sound amazing. My apprentice Matilda plays trombone, and so when she and Guillaume are both at an event and they can do the 2-part trumpet fanfares, it sounds so good. But even just one trumpet is pretty awesome, to have that little something's about to happen, everybody pay attention kind of moment.
One of the things I really love about the fromage fete is that, did I say that right?
Yep.
is you guys like came up with this idea, and you all sort of put in what you're good at, and you made this band, and you bring the fun with you,
Yeah.
right? And it's just such a great example of somebody saying, this is what should happen. This would make events more fun, and just doing it.
Yeah.
And I love that.
I think, I think that's kind of what we do. Just like, I want this thing to happen. How can we make that happen? Let's do it. So, yeah.
You guys are super good at it, and you guys are so good at being generous with everything you put together. You're like the most non-snooty period camp ever.
We try. But we try to keep that in mind as well. Like, it's very easy to be like, why aren't they doing it this way? But, everybody's got their own thing they're into. So we just do the thing we're into. Try to do it well. And we try to drag everybody along that wants to come. So
you're very appreciated.
Yes, it's been fun at events like 12th Night, where you have where it's easier to carry instruments around. We've gotten what's it called, viola da gamba in our group, and somebody that played flute, and it was like her first or second event, and she was like, well, I play flute, would it be okay? And she read music, and she joined in. And anytime people want to sing or add in, it's fun to be able to have that be another kind of one of those community building points where it's like, we don't know you yet, but come play music with us and we'll get to know you.
Exactly.
Also, we have an album coming soon for Fromage Fête, but we have to finish the last little tidbits. Stefan did the recording for us.
How are you guys going to sell that?
Don't know yet. It'll be like a thumb drive kind of thing that you can get, but
well, when you should tell us, and we will spread the word.
Yes, we certainly will.
For sure.
We kept saying, oh, it'll be July coronation. Oh, maybe it'll be September crown. Maybe we'll have an event again sometime.
Yeah, whenever we have events
for that.
For that. Yeah.
We get them.
So this is the cutest picture ever.
This was my little Burgundian outfit. And I don't remember why I decided it would be funny to do like a pinup outfit, but with floor length, long sleeved outfit. So yeah, that was just fun. This was for the video that we did, the dance video that happened early in COVID. Guillaume and I actually met swing dancing because we both were into Lindy Hop. And so we got up there and we got all our medieval clothes on and we danced Lindy Hop and tango and stuff to the dance tune and videoed it. But I've actually used this photo a couple of times when people say, how wide a skirt do you need to ride in? I'm like, well, about that wide. It's fun to spin in.
When you ride in a skirt, do you sit in it? Yep. Or do you put it over the horse?
I was commenting online about just that today. In the 14th century, women still rode astride. The side saddle, the totally sideways side saddle, came in right around 1400. It's kind of interesting how much like right around then you start seeing women sitting sideways. And then a couple hundred years later, they came up with that kind of more Victorian side saddle where you've got your leg over a hook and you're kind of facing 3/4 forward. But in my time period, I get to sit on top of the horse just like I do in modern times. And the skirts are really full. So if you spread the skirt over the back of the horse like it's a comparison, the inside of your skirt will get so disgustingly dirty. It's so gross. Yeah. Horses are dirty and they sweat and things. And no matter how much you groom them, your inside of your clothes will still be really gross. So what they did instead was you'd have a cloth under the saddle that hung down so your clothes don't touch the sides of the horse. And the saddles had a taller back generally than what we currently ride in general. And you just sit on the back of your skirt and it sort of piles up in front of you a little bit, but mostly it just hangs down the side of the horse. And as long as your skirt is full enough, perfectly comfortable.
Right.
It's a little arranging when you first get on, but it's quite comfy. And if you're not wearing, modern riding pants underneath, and you just have your medieval boxer shorts and your knee-length hose, like in the Burgundian picture there, your skirt kind of wraps up under your legs and keep your legs protected from the saddle. So it actually works just fine.
Thank you. I've always wondered.
A lot of people do like cut a dress down the front and do all that, but it's like you never see anybody standing off a horse with their skirt open down the front. So I'm pretty sure this is what they did.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
So dancing has been such a big part of your life. I mean, you did the Irish dancing as a child, and then you and Jonathan met, Guillaume met swing dancing. Is dancing something that you also bring into the SCA?
It's tricky because we often are the ones playing the music.
Oh, well, yes.
But I often we often try and take turns. Somebody swap out and go in and dance, and take turns actually getting to dance. But I often equate riding with dancing as well. So the horseback riding is very much like dancing with your horse as your dance partner. And so in that sense, we still do, and we still like to make dancing happen. And I enjoy dancing when I get an opportunity to. Just we're often the dance band, so we don't always get to dance as much.
So what's happening here?
This was the Madrona baronial banquet 2 or 3 years ago. It had the food was a Burgundian theme. We have this amazing culinary guild in Madrona that does an all-out, no holds barred feast every year and a half. It alternates an 18-month cycle, so it's sometimes in the fall and sometimes in the spring. And they have wonderfully researched foods, and it's always so delicious that you walk out of there just stuffed, about ready to pop. But it was a Burgundian themed feast that year, and so everybody that had Burgundian clothes brought them out and wore them. And so the guy in the back is actually wearing, I think, his wife's veil over something that he put on his head, but it makes a pretty convincing hennin, which I found kind of delightful. And then the rest of us are all in our thing. Our Burgundian.
This person?
What's that?
This person is who you're talking about?
Yeah, that's our baronial herald. He just photobombed us there in his makeshift hennin. And then that's me, and yeah. These are the prizes for the Emprise of the Black Lion. This is pre-firing, so they actually came out dark blue with brown spots and shiny. But I didn't have a picture of them all finished. For each of the main tournaments at the event, the winner overall gets a plate. So the equestrian winner of the day gets a plate. The rapier fighter, we had a youth tournament this year. We had a youth paw. We called it the petit paw, and it was the cutest thing ever. And then there was the adults, pot arms. And what else? We keep adding more activities. So this year I did 6 plates.
Do you make these?
This is like a paint your own pottery kind of thing. So I get pre-made plates, and I have the paints, and I take them home and I paint them up, and then I bring them in, and they say, "What is this?" And I said, "Just fire them, please."
Very cool.
Yeah. So it's nice for people to have something 15th century-ish to take home with them. This is a laurel scroll that I did for Zoetart for her laurel elevation. And this is one of the things, like I was talking about earlier, about she wanted something small. She has a teeny little house, and she wanted something that wouldn't take up an entire wall. And she likes flowers and she likes colorful things, and she does a lot of pewter casting. So I found a book of hours that has a lot of the trompe l'oeil things, and one of them was all pilgrim badges, so it was like pewter things on one page, and then others had flowers and bugs and gulls and other weird things around the perimeter. And so I truncated the text a lot. So this is like 4 by 6 inches.
Oh, wow.
It's quite small. And I truncated the text so that it read kind of like you've turned the page and it's the last bit. So therefore we say you're a laurel, as opposed to like all of the usual expository stuff that goes on a peerage document. And I did the three badges down the right-hand side of the page, the little heart and the windmill, which actually turns, and the little shoes are pewter items that Spica had made.
Wow.
And both the windmill and the shoes, the patents, are very cleverly cast so that they go together. Like the straps over the top of the patents are dimensional. And so I drew those, I painted those in as though they were sitting on the page. And then I did her arms up at the top and the royal seal down at the bottom as though they were also cast items that were sitting there. So, and then a variety of colorful flowers that she liked. And that bright green background, which I just love, which was straight off of one of the pages in that book, had that color background. But this was kind of a fun adaptation of our usual scroll format to something that suited the recipient better, but still served the function.
Right.
This was a pelican scroll for Luciano Wascari down in Summits. And this was based on the Chandler's Guild of England's grant of arms. And so I adapted the words from various 15th century grants. There's a wonderful site that has all these transcriptions of 15th century grants, and they kind of fall into two formats. So one of them suits our SCA function pretty well. So adapting that and, changing it to be more service oriented than heraldry. We take out the things about bequeathing these arms to you and all of your heirs and things like that isn't appropriate. So we take that out and put in other fun things. But it was fun to do the wordsmithing on this and to have so much text. It's got those wonderful roundabout sentences that refer back to things and get very clumsy and circuitous, but so very period and nerdy and awesome. And then it's in the voice of the herald, which isn't our usual tradition. But the herald is up there in the T, and I think it took about 3 tries to get a version of the text that the herald was comfortable with, not feeling like she had been had words put in her mouth that weren't appropriate. Because we give arms from the king, and the herald approves them. And the historical wording is more that the herald presents these arms. And so the wording ends up being something like, I, as the herald, give these arms as approved by the king, or at the behest of the king, more or less. So it still maintains our SCA structure, but uses more of a format like the historical documents. So that was some fun wordsmithing and reviewing and getting it all to work for everyone involved. But then the scrolly stuff across the top and the layout and the heraldry with the helm and the mantling and all that was also based on what was on that scroll. And it was very fun to do the armor with the shiny metal look. That was very challenging, but also satisfying because I think it came out well. And And the scrolly mantling is just always fun to draw. And then it's got the pendant seals off the bottom, which aren't on there because it hadn't been presented yet. But those are another fun thing that I think is geeky and cool.
I love those.
Yeah. They just make it look so right.
Mm-hmm.
This is Guillaume's jousting shield, his new one. And he's making a little happy face over there. I'm still hounding a blacksmith friend who's an equestrian down in Caid to make me a hook for the back. Because one of the most challenging things that happens at jousting tournaments is trying to get the jousters on their horses and armored up. It's really hard to get on a horse with a helmet on and a shield hanging off your shoulder. So they tend to get on, and then somebody has to stand up on a step stool with the horse wiggling and get that helmet on and get it all strapped on, and then get the shield up and around their shoulder because it's attached to one arm and around their neck so that it hangs in the right place. And there are some clever jousters over in Europe and Australia that have come up with, I believe, due to research of extant shields, this hook thing that goes on the back so that they can put it on themselves. And so that means less time standing on a box trying to help a nervous horse and a nervous jouster get all kitted up. So that still has to go on the back, and then he can start using it. But this was a fun painting project. I think of it as a scribble project because it's very much painting little things and heraldry and words and all the good stuff.
How big is the shield in reality?
It sits roughly from the jouster's mid chest to shoulder. So it's about 15 by 18-ish. So smaller than we use for foot combat shields. And then the bouche, the little cutout of the side, is something that at certain periods they would rest the lance in. We don't generally because we're doing the breakable lances, but that's another very jousting specific aspect to the shape of it. And we did a lot of looking at different shields that survive. Oh, it's this big.
Oh, awesome.
And actually, having looked at more historical shields, if it was proportioned more like this, more like it is on me, on him, it would be even more historically accurate. But the next one will be bigger once this one gets all gouged up.
Thank you.
Cold because it's been out in the garage.
Speaking of cold.
Cold. So this was a hoot. There's a wonderful early 15th century fresco of nerds having a snowball fight. Why not? You know. So when we had that big snow 2 years ago, we invited people to come over and get dressed up and play in the snow, and we got some really great photos. And our pose here is very much what's depicted in the left half of the fresco. And then we had other pictures where we were depicting the right half of the fresco. We didn't have quite enough people and a photographer, but we did our best, and it was super fun. And it was perfect snowballing snow, so that was good.
That was a good snow 2 years ago.
Also, I thought I would need a hood, but with this fuzzy lined dress, I was perfectly warm out there for probably an hour and a half. We were out there. Guess what? 15th century clothes are good for the cold.
So cute.
Snowballs are actually flying at this point. Yeah, and then we let the horse come running up and got some more good pictures.
Such a beautiful horse.
Yeah, he's pretty majestic. Oh, this is a Gulf Wars. So this is down in Mississippi at the Interkingdom war event down there. And there's typically about 60 horses at this event every year. It's huge. So it's the big horse event. So it's worth flying down there, and I think it's a week and a half long. It's a long event. And there's pretty much any horse activity that people in the SCA do gets some time on the calendar. So they do, 3 days of jousting classes, and then they do foam joust tournament and a wood joust tournament. This activity is called How to Ride Before a Prince, which is the name of a chapter in a book by a 16th century Italian riding manual by Federico Grisona, where he talks about how to show off your horsemanship prowess for your visiting nobility in much the same way you'd have like a parade ground at a military thing where, you have your kind of general shows up and they march all the troops up and down and show how fabulous they are. People would do this kinds of thing where, you've got all these military trained riders that are your nobility that are going to be the officers and cavalry, and your duke shows up and you have some pomp and ceremony and people come out and show how well their horse is trained. So Grisona talks about where you should put the duke. It's much like King Rene in his tournament book. Duke should sit here or maybe there and be on a balcony if at all possible, and come out and salute him thus and say these things, and then show off these different movements and make sure your horse doesn't get overtired because that won't look cool. And so it's this wonderful sort of description of artistic riding, which is something that is near to my heart. A lot of what we do in the SCA is very much hitting targets, and very, it's more about scoring the points by hitting the targets than it is about how well trained your horse is. If your horse can get you through it, fine. And I really enjoy the precision and the finesse of having really good partnership with your horse. That's really important to me. So having somebody who's in the period talking about how elegantly you sit is important, how calm and relaxed and trusting your horse looks, and how graceful you are in your poise and everything, that makes me happy. So it's a woman named Bridget, who's down in Anstiora, came up with a way to make this kind of artistic riding into a contest, which is important in the SCA, because to get something on the schedule, we like to have it be a contest. So some sort of competition. So she came up with a scoring system and a way of judging it as objectively-ish as possible. And so this is her horse Griffin that she let me ride in it. And he is delightful, even though I only got like a half an hour to play with him to get to know each other. We had a really good time, and I get to participate in this game that I really enjoy. And so I've been trying to introduce that back here as another activity that we do in Ontier of ride beautifully.
It sounds super fun.
This is Guillaume's procession at the Emprise several years ago with his retainers. So from where you see me over there on the right forward is all Guillaume's folks. And we, recruited Fiac and Patrick and our Baron and everybody else we could get with some sort of red garment on them, and march in and make our flowery introduction. And we've got his lance and his spear for one of the other games, and banners, and his herald. Speaking has been his herald for several years. So she's got her tabard and the hat and everything, and all the text according to the tournament book for what we should say to be impressive and cool. And then Guillaume's actually on a horse there. You can't really see much of Darcy in there, but and then, yeah, we've got some other groups collected up behind for the next riders. You can see Rhino's banner there, the black and yellow with the green border. So each group comes in individually and makes their presentation before we start the day. That's fun. This is last year's Emprise. And we ended up with Guillaume riding Jacques, who is Raphael and Kyrie's horse. We borrowed him for about a month and a half before the tournament because he was a bit out of shape. And so we got to know him and worked him and got him back in shape. And then Guillaume rode him in the tournament. And he actually won that year, I think. So Jacques is a very good boy. And
What breed horse is he?
he is a Percheron, which is what Montjoy is as well, the big hairy one we saw earlier. But Montjoy wasn't up for traveling that year, so we rode Jacques. But yeah, they're both Percherons, which is a draft breed from Normandy. And this is me riding Darshan, who is a Frisian cross. And that was down at Griffinwood, which is where they have Honeymore, down near Olympia. And so that was just, I think, just riding him around and having a good time. I don't think we were doing a particular activity, but riding is always worth doing. There we are at the Emprise with Jacques again. And he's got his helmet on for jousting, which Raphael made. It's all tooled leather with Guillaume's arms on it. It's very pretty. This is Darshan in his someday this will be finished dress-up outfit.
And is that leather?
It's leather and felt.
Okay.
So the gray parts are a thick wool felt, and the white parts are a upholstery leather. So finding an off-white leather of suitable quality was a bit of a challenge. And the painting has a two-tone effect. So instead of putting fringe around the edge of leather, I backed it with the felt, which gives it enough body to do what it needs to do. And then there's 60 tassels, which I made. But Darshan had an injury and was out for about a year, and his body changed a lot. So I need to refit it and then finish it. So. And that was just for fun. So the first time I tried to make a gingerbread house was probably 1995. And I got this wild hair to make it shaped like the Borgund Stave Church, which is this really cool, I think, 12th century early church in Norway that's just totally cool looking. And I had no idea what I was doing, and it was a complete disaster. And so fast forward 20 years, and Kyrie said, let's make gingerbread house. And it's like, okay, if you actually know what you're doing, maybe I could revisit this idea. So between Kyrie and Eleonora and I, we made this fabulous, ridiculous gingerbread house. And so this is my first successful gingerbread house ever, and I think it's really cool. So medievally inspired. This is another emprise. So this is Darshan in the red caparison with Guillaume on him, and our, at the time, equestrian champion of Antir. I'm totally blanking on his name. That's totally not fair. His little horse is Tazbuck. Or Millie. Ivan.
I love that you know the horse's name, but not his.
This is something you will find about horse people. They'll be like, yeah, that one that rides so-and-so. So this is Ivan on, actually, I think that's Millie, because that's more recent. Anyway, when he was champion. So I made my dress over on the far left. I made Darshan's caparison and Guillaume's plume, and painted his shield and made his gambeson that's under his armor. And I made the saddle cloth and champion's tabard that Yvonne has. I didn't make anything Kyrie is wearing, but then I also made the herald's tabard and the hat that Spieke is wearing. So pretty much everything in this picture that's a garment.
Isn't that fun to look at a very medieval looking photo and start to look at all the things you've made, and you're like, hey,
I did that.
Contributed.
Yeah. So
Cool.
I especially like the plumes. The next year they had instituted a rule to have eye protection on the horses for the jousting, which is a very good idea. And but it stated like a week or two before the tournament. So we bought them racing hoods, which are these eye cups that racehorses use that you can just purchase and stick on your horse. So totally not medieval looking, but I couldn't resist. So I made a little miniature shield to go on the front of Darshan's forehead. So he's got his own plumes as well. The next year they both had plumes, and that was fun.
This is such a great photo too, with the broken lances.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the foam flying. So this is my lovely mare Duchess, who doesn't really like to go to events very much, but she looks so pretty. And I made her a nice outfit before we really realized that she wasn't fond of doing SCA events. So she has a very nice dress up outfit. And Sophia up in Thierry made the brass bosses that are on the hip, and then there's also ones on the bridle and the chest, so that it looks just like in the Très Ors of Jean de Berry depictions of horse trappings. So she's all nice and dressed up, and this is how we sit on a horse in a fancy dress.
There we go.
You just pile it up in front of you and underneath your legs, and off you go. It works just great. So, yep. That's down at Ontier West War, and that's my horse Darshan again, and another riding in a dress moment. And I almost always ride, well, I pretty much always ride in a riding helmet because I've had enough concussions in my life and I don't need any more. And so one of my geeks is coming up with ways to make this very modern piece of equipment look not out of place in our historical settings. So in this instance, I've just got a turban wrapped around my helmet, but it's a bulky enough hat that it doesn't look weirdly bulky with the helmet in there. The chin strap's a bit odd, but I've come up with a bunch of different ways to look for hats that stick out from your head some, and how to dress up a helmet to look like a medieval hat. So this one's a bicocket, and I built a sort of coif thing underneath to cover up the chin strap of the helmet. The guy in the background, interestingly, also has a little hood that he's put over his helmet. So I was pleased to see that this was an event down in the West, but that some other folks down there were also wearing riding helmets and also covering them up so they look nice. And this saddle cloth is one that I made as a prize for the Emprise one year, for one of the side tournaments that we do where everybody presents a gift that other riders get to pick to take home with them. And so it was nice, since I hadn't really taken any good photos of it before I gave it away, and it had made its way down to the West with Ula, that I got to use it and get some pictures with it. So that was fun. This is at Gulf Wars with our lovely king and queen, Styrkar and Stjarna, in the procession. They do this amazing procession with all of the royalty, starting out at the horse camp and riding all the way through the parts of the site and onto the warfield, and then they hop off behind the stage and come out and do their opening court. And it is an amazing undertaking to get that many people, many of whom have never been on a horse before, on horses and through this somewhat chaotic procession through, you know, a lot of terrain that not all horses might be entirely comfortable with, and all dressed up in their royal heraldry, ideally. And it was pretty cool. So they've got it down to a science down there. It's pretty impressive how they work everybody through that system. And
Styrkar in that incredible Ugo armor.
Well, and it's wonderful because the woman who owns this horse, Tedder, who is enormous, he's as massive as our horse Montjoy and probably 8 inches taller.
Wow.
She has a good relationship with Guillaume and trusts him with her horse. So our crown often gets to ride Tedder, this massive, impressive horse, because Guillaume is going to lead him, and she trusts Guillaume to lead him. And so our crown gets to ride this like stately, magnificent horse. And so it's like, cool. Okay, don't get the crown caught in the tree because you're way up there. But he got to be in his spectacular armor on this quite spectacular horse, looking very majestic. So that was fun. We dressed up in our matching outfits to lead him in. And then Stiarna got to ride the most adorable little pony. This is a fjord horse. And he belongs to a lady from Florida who had this really cool tack for him, and just the cutest little thing. So they were just the prettiest picture. So
And this looks like oak back here.
What's that?
Is that oak back here, Prince of?
No, I don't think so. Unless he was Prince of Thierry at the time, but I think it's the next. It does kind of look like him, but I think they've just got one too.
Okay.
You know, we've only got so many archetypes. Sometimes you're like, oh, we have one of those. Yeah. This is my 16th century boy clothes, but I had just finished this hat. So this is another helmet cover. And I built it's a pulled felt hat. So it's a little more elaborate construction than just sewing. And
Wow.
I think it came out pretty well. I still need to make a big ruff so that my head's bigger, because the hat's really huge to fit over the riding helmet. But that's our boy Montjoy, just taking it easy. And
You've had him for a while.
yep, we've had him for about 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've petted him before.
Yes. He's very fuzzy and very awesome.
He's beautiful.
So this is the technology clinic that we had. So there's outside of the SCA, there's a larger sort of community of people that like to do historical military stuff on horses, including jousting, but also fencing and lance fencing, the historical martial arts stuff where they're going through the manuals that a lot of the fencers, the historical fencers that we have used, like the Fiore and some of those other books, will have a little section on how to do your fencing on horseback. And so there's folks that do that. And one of the sort of stars in the larger equestrian community is a man named Arne Koets. And he's a Dutch guy who lives in Germany in a 15th century manor because he's that cool. And he is, he also had the opportunity to train at the Hofreitschule Buckeberg, which is the princely riding school. I'm just snickering at what the captioning did with that. Buckeberg. Nope. Anyway, it's the princely riding school in Germany. So if you've heard of like the Spanish riding school with the Lipizans and everything, Germany has its own princely riding school where they maintain the classical traditions and stuff. And he got to train there. So he has the technical riding knowledge to do the precision riding so that you can actually do fencing on horseback, because you need your footwork to be done by your horse to do all that tight maneuvering to get in close, back away, and turn. And the origins of dressage come from that need. And so he's a really awesome resource. And he's also been doing, fencing instruction for years and years and years. So
I was going to ask if dressage had its roots in this stuff.
Yeah.
Pretty
So one of the main, just to be as brief as I can, one of the main principles of dressage is to get the horse to learn how to use its muscles efficiently, to shift its weight onto its hind feet so that it can then be very maneuverable. If you ask a horse to turn really fast and they just sort of swing their butt around, you in the saddle don't go anywhere.
Yeah.
You want them to move their shoulders around because that moves you. So if you're really close to somebody and they're about to stab you and you want to move away, you need to be able to tell your horse with one hand on your sword, hop over that way so that I don't get stabbed. And the horse needs to be balanced and poised and responsive enough to say, okay, you're out of range now, or vice versa, you get to stab them. So there's a lot of precision and a lot of riding without relying on your hands. That takes a lot of skill and a lot of training and a lot of teaching the horse to be nimble. But that also teaches the horse how to use their body well, which keeps them sound for a long time. So that's a horse you can keep riding into its 20s versus a horse that's going to have arthritis and everything from not using their body well.
It's fascinating.
So, it's very exciting to have somebody who can teach us all those things. So we
have another section of photos of him too.
Yeah.
But I didn't get them all in the right order. So we're going to take a little segue here.
Sure. Did we talk about these?
Yeah.
All right. So the previous one was a comparison that I made for a Ren Fair guy and as a commission. And I was just kind of pleased to be able to make something out of linen and well constructed and that fit his horse perfectly to send off to the Ren Fair world, because their stuff isn't always as cool. But, and he looked really good. This is my young horse named Galliano, who I got just over a year ago. And have been, he came to me as a 8-year-old horse who had lived in a mostly feral kind of situation where he wasn't neglected or ill-treated at all, but he hadn't really had a lot of handling. And so he is a blank slate, which is fun because I get to start from scratch with him. And so he is learning to be a riding horse. And I work with my trainer, who is a professional and knows what she's doing, which is a necessary resource because I've never trained a horse from the ground up before. About 4 times a week, we have lessons together, and he's coming along very nicely. But we're taking everything slow and doing it as traditionally as we can with classical methods and reading as much as I can find on how to do this the right way. And I'm very proud of how his musculature is developing because that shows that he's using his body correctly. And the saddle is one that was made, the company collaborated with the Hofreitschule in Buckeberg to, based on one of their extant 17th century saddles, to create a saddle using modern technology and materials to create a saddle that works the way those historical saddles worked. And it is the most comfortable saddle I've ever ridden in. It's totally awesome. So wow. I get to sort of feel what it's like to ride in a traditional dressage saddle, to do my best attempt at traditional dressage, which just means training. So
very cool.
This is our horse Montjoy in the comparison that I made for Alan's horse, whose name was Max. But it fits him quite nicely as well. And the saddle that's on him is one that we had made by a guy in the Netherlands that is a historical shaped jousting saddle.
Wow.
So he made it to measurements, and you can't really see all that well, but up here on the front pommel is a little hook that you can rest your lance butt in.
Oh, cool.
Which is nice.
Oh, right here.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so that's just on one side. The other side doesn't have that. But it's got that very high cantle that supports your sort of lower butt area when you're jousting, so you can't get pushed off the back of the saddle, but also you can sort of use that for support. And then it's got the high pommel for groin protection, since armor that you can ride in rarely protects that well there. So the saddle helps you out with preventing injuries. So this is Arna Coots working with Kyrie and her little mare Gigi. This was the second year he was here. And so these clinics were in November. It was very cold, but that was when we could get him here because he does jousting stuff all summer. And yeah, it was really fun to be able to provide an opportunity to get SCA riders access to somebody who does this at a really high level. And he's an excellent teacher. And he also does tango and things, so it's fun to watch him use his dance language and his dance ability to convey what he's doing with his body to communicate to the horse. And he's like 6'4" and all limbs, so his gestures are very long. So when he demonstrates things that he's doing, it's very clear, which is neat. And the fabulous waxed mustache. So here he's drawing out some of the historical figures that you find in a lot of the training manuals from the 16th and 17th centuries, in training your horse to have all of this precision and mobility. There's a lot of riding figures. So that How to Ride Before a Prince contest that I talked about, down in at Gulf Wars, is going through some of these books and finding figures and saying, I'm going to ride this figure and then this figure and then this figure. And that's kind of what you're judged on.
And do you do like lead changes and things like that through the figures?
You choose the maneuvers that you and your horse can do well. So if your horse doesn't do lead changes, then maybe don't pick that. But, and you can do things at a walk if that's what you can do, or you can do them at a canter if you're up for that. You get to choose, and obviously things that are more difficult and impressive will score better. But these are training tools. So, you start at a walk and you work your horse up till they can do it competently and well. That cloverleaf kind of 4-loop pattern up in the middle is a very useful one for just determining a straight course and making your arc be at exactly the radius you want. That requires a lot of fine maneuvering. So
super cool.
It was neat to hear him talk about what they're for and how you use them. And there he is on his own horse, being terribly impressive. He just completed, he has an armorer that lives at his manor and has been working on his armoring skills, and they, get to touch things from museums and try them out and things. And they've got several very well-trained horses on site. So this was one of the first test runs when they got this horse armor completed to put all the pieces on and try riding him in it and see how he did, and try gradually more complex things, and he apparently did quite nicely in it. So
wow.
But that's a lot of stuff to wear for a horse that also has to move. So,
yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah.
That's Galliano again. When I first went down there to get him, I think that might have been the bringing him home trip. So there he is.
And he's your big project now.
Yeah, he takes a lot of my time, but he's also a lot of fun. So.
That's awesome. And I think that is it.
All right. That's all.
So I will stop sharing. And we're back.
Yay. Great. Yeah, that's kind of my latest stuff.
Very cool. Do you have any other questions, Rifkin? Annisa, do you have anything that you wanted to talk about that we haven't covered already?
Well, I feel like I've talked more than I have in months.
It's weird, huh?
It is.
Well, this has been so fascinating. It's really wonderful to get to know more about what you do and the horse community and everything. Thank you so much.
And the depth at which you are are delving to learn it in a period way. It's just
Speaking out works fine.
it's so fascinating. It's so fascinating. Seriously, I was.
Obviously, I can go on and on and on about horse things anytime. So. But this was fun. And it's nice to be able to share that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I've always wanted to pick your brain, and that's one of the benefits of doing these interviews, is that you get to pick people that you want to talk to. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. And anytime you want to pet a pony, do come by.
Oh, definitely.
When we can all be in the same place again.
Yes. I have a almost 12-year-old little girl who really, really is fascinated by horses, but hasn't been around them. So that would be fun to get her going on that. Rifkin, do you have any interviews this weekend? You're not doing any Ducal interviews.
I do not. I have the weekend off.
Yay! Next week, for the Branch of Laurels interviews, I have Mistress Garandakoot from, formerly from Ontier, from Caid now, who does Armenian persona costuming,
Everything.
knitting, singing. She's amazing. She sung me in at my laureling ceremony, and I just love her. So I'm really looking forward to that. And then Wednesday on the sisters interview, we have Viscount Kith.
From the middle, who actually reigned in Sonagua in the West. So that should be fun. He's a character.
So that'll be a good time. Thank you again, Annisa, for coming tonight and spending time with us. And thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you next week.
All right, thanks. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Ciao.